All right, let's talk about specificity. I've been asking that question for decades, not decades, but maybe 10 years to every developer I've been interviewing. What the specificity is. Many people fails here. That's a vital aspect of coding. Can anyone give me a decent answer about what the specificity in CSS is? Yeah. All right. You tried. Anyone has any idea about what the specificity means? No? All right. So specificity, first of all, the best answer possible. Specificity is a number. That's it. A number. It's a number that the browser takes in order to decide which CSS rules apply to a given element. Let me give you an example. So I got my HTML and my CSS. You see? This is what we did yesterday. Div class box, hello CSS. Let me put hello specificity. Yep. And now, box. What happened if I, well, actually, let me simplify that even more. Let me get rid of the main div. So I just have a single div. You see? Single div. Box. So that doesn't make any sense. We don't have any class name. So yes, a box. If I do background color yellow, I hope you agree with me that eventually, here you go. The box has a yellow background. Let me add some padding. This is just for readability purposes. Here you go. Oh, easy. But now, it means that I don't have any class. So even simpler. Will it work now? Will I have a yellow background? No, correct, because there isn't any class name called box. So how can we change the background color without modifying the HTML? With div. That's correct, Anita. Yeah. Just type in div. That will affect every single div on the screen. It works. Does it make sense? So, what can I do that? Can I then declare a new div underneath with background color green? So, Anita, you think that's not valid?
Green will be the color.
So, the color, Anita suggests that the eventual color will be green. What do you think? Why green and not yellow?
Because the last declared.
The last one wins, right? Let's have a look. Here you go. And that, just to prove the theory, if I move it to the top, what will the color be now?
Yellow.
Yellow, right? So that's the first principle of a specificity. The last one wins. But be careful, because that's not always the case. Let me give you an example. So, back to the green color to the bottom. Let me bring the class back. Class name, box, right? So now let me change the selector, the box. Do you still believe the color will be green?
I don't know which takes the priority, whether the class or the element name.
So who wins, the tag selector or the class selector? The class. Let's have a look. Oh, that's a bit weird. Wait a minute. The padding, yeah, but let's get rid of the padding. Yeah, that's a bit weird. Anyway, sorry. Let's keep it simple. There you go. I think it's readable enough, right? All right. So the green color wins, but does it win because it's a class or because it's declared afterwards?
Because it's a class.
To prove the theory, let's repeat the exercise. I'm moving the class to the top. You see? So will the last selector win this time? No? Why not? Class is stronger. I like it. Class is stronger. Let's have a look. So essentially, Tiny is right. The class is stronger. It's more specific. That's why it wins. You see, specificity. Class is more specific. All right, so from a human point of view, we understand that. But from a technical point of view, how the browser evaluates that, giving a number. So the browser will assign a number to each selector. The tag selectors, like the div, have number, specificity 1. That's the number. Does anybody know what's the specificity number for classes? Wrong? 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 Wrong?
5.
Wrong? 10. That's correct, Tiny. Eventually, it was just a matter of time, right? That someone, cool, 10. So what the browser says, hey, browser thinks, hey, wait a minute, I have a conflict, yeah? I have two valid CSS rules working on the same element. Which one should I apply? The one with the highest number. The div has 1. The class has 10. So that one wins. Yeah? What happens if I got two classes, box and box 2? And now I change the color to blue. Which one wins? Blue or green? Blue, that's right. Why? Because in that case, there are 3 selectors fighting for the attention of the browser. This one is out, clearly. But in between these two, they got the same specificity number. So in that case, as we explained before, the one coming last wins. And thankfully with Google Chrome, there is a way to visualize that more or less. If you open DevTools, inspect, so as you will see in a minute, look, you see? So the browser is really trying its best to apply the 3 colors. But as hopefully you can see, not sure if you can see that, green, straight through, like, hey, yes, I know you try that, but this is not applying. And same for yellow, straight through. However, the blue is not a straight through, right? What happens if I untick that checkbox? That's correct, Octavian, will be the green. And if I untick that one? Yellow. And if I untick that one? Nothing, transparent. Yeah? So that's the way you can easily play with different values using the Google Chrome DevTools. Any questions so far? No? All right, so let's add some spice to the exercise. Back to the class versus tag. So in HTML, you can add attributes. That will become very important when dealing with React. You will see that within the next days or weeks. So with attributes, essentially, you can do something like that. You can pass an attribute, hello equal Codiri. That's a custom attribute, but that's valid in HTML. Yeah? So does anyone know how do I refer to this attribute in CSS? Sorry, ignore the dot. Square brackets, and then what? Hello equals Codiri. That's the CSS syntax to refer to an element via the attributes. So now, let's do a test. Background color, give me a sexy color, guys. Salmon. It's always the same color. That's all right. Salmon works for now. So, which one wins? Green, salmon, or yellow? Salmon, all right. Why salmon? What's the specificity number associated to the attribute selector? All right, 2. So, oh, listen, that's a good point. That's a good point. Look at what Kaini said. If that would be the case, then the color wouldn't be salmon. It would be green in this case.
Something greater than 10.
11, wrong. Less than 11. No. No, just integer number. Of course, Alex.
I think 10.
It's 10. So attribute and classes, they have the same specificity number. So, which one wins? The last one, correct. Here you go. Chinese color, salmon, right? But if my theory, I mean, not a theory, this is not like talking about aliens, this is based on science. If my assumption is right, now the color should be green, right? There you go. So definitely, class and attribute have the same specificity number. Is there anything, can you figure out any selector more specific than class and attributes? ID, I love that, I love that. So in HTML, you can use ID equal row shell. So if my ID is row shell, can you tell me now how do I refer to that ID on the CSS? Hash row shell, correct. And now background color, which one? Magenta. Yes. All right. Cool. Magenta. So, will the ID win? Let's make it more complicated. If I move it to the top, will the ID still win? Yes? If that's the case,
I think it,
say it again?
I think it will.
I don't know. Let's have a look. Yes, it will work. That's magenta color.
So why would you call
Wait, what?
why do you call ID with hash?
Why you use the hash?
Yeah, so why is one hash and why is the other one square brackets?
Sorry, I can hear. Why? That's the way the CSS works. You need to get used to it, Fish. So the IDs are referred with a hash, the attributes are referred with a square bracket, and the classes are referred with a dot. That's the way CSS works, right? I didn't create the standard, so.
With the attributes,
Yep.
where you've got like hello equals to, is that whole thing completely made up? Like, is hello something that's different?
Yeah, it's something I made up. So I can put here Alex.
Right, okay.
So if I put Alex, I should put Alex here. Yeah, that's fine. So, right, the color is magenta. So the ID clearly wins because it's more specific. The ID is supposed to be unique. That's why it's more specific. FYI, IDs were very popular in the 90s, like Backstreet Boys. But today, they are barely used because they go against the basic principles of reusability. Yeah? Some of you are working on task number 7 in Conflicts. Task number 7 is about componentizing. You got one component and you reuse it multiple times. That doesn't play well with the principle of IDs. Yeah? In the 90s, they were popular because it was tough to interact with HTML elements. So thanks to the ID, you could somehow easily deal with the UI interface, with the interface. Yeah? But today, thankfully, you have better ways of interacting with the UI, as you will see in the next weeks. Yeah, I mean, technically speaking, that's still valid. Yeah, but when I land on a project that is heavily using IDs, to me, smells like the old furniture. You know, when you visit your grandma, smells like old furniture. So that's where the ID thingy is. All right. So you know that the IDs are more specific, but how much? What's the number here? 15? Wrong. Wrong? Wrong? I mean, guys, let's think about that. Look at the scale. Ah, correct. From tag to class and attribute, it's factor 10, right? 1 to 10. So now, likewise, as Alex guessed, that's 100. Yeah? Probably you were thinking something. Why we jump from 1 to 10? Let me do a break here. Let me get rid of let me simplify the problem a bit. Let me try to comment that out. You know, you can comment code, by the way. So that's the way you comment code in CSS with slash and star, and then you finish the comment with star and slash. There is an extremely helpful shortcut in VS Code to comment the selected code. If you are a Mac, you have a Mac, you can press command slash, and the code will be commented. If you're a Windows user, I think it's control slash. And the same thing works with the HTML and the JavaScript. So if I press command slash, you see, it will comment and uncomment my code quickly. All right, so let's think about what's the point of jumping 9 units from 1 to 10. Because, I mean, from a human point of view, you may be thinking that should be 2, right? 2 is greater than 1. So why 1 to 10? There is a reason. Binary? No, that has nothing to do with binary numbers, no. So the thing is, that could be more complicated than it looks like. And let me present you an example. If I have another div here, yeah, that's valid, right? I can nest HTML elements, of course. You see what I'm doing? I'm creating a new div inside of an existing div. And then what? Then I can do that. Please find a div that is inside of another div. 2 nested divs. I mean, I'm talking about div, but I could be talking about label. We'll talk about HTML tags later on today. Yeah. So just to simplify a bit, label or span. There are multiple HTML elements. It doesn't really matter. 2 HTML tags. So can you tell me what's the eventual specificity associated to that selector? It's 2, that's correct, because it's 1 plus 1. And what happens if I have another div inside? And I add div. What's the specificity associated to that selector? It's 3, that's correct. 1 plus 1 plus 1. Do you agree with me that if I keep adding divs, eventually the specificity here will be 10, 11, 12? Yeah? No? Jiyun, you don't agree? Why? There should be some limit. Yeah, there should be peace in the wall and things like that, right? I mean, there are 2 discussions here. One discussion is whether that's technically speaking possible. Other question is whether that's a good technique. But technically speaking, you could do, if your DOM structure is complete enough, you can do div, and eventually, that selector will defeat that one. Yeah? So that's why the specificity moves from 1 to 10. Because if it was 2, that will imply that selector will be more specific than that one. And according to the CSS standard, that's not a good thing. Yeah? So that's the way it works. Technically speaking, could the list of selector divs defeat the ID selector?
Correct. Yes.
How many divs will we need here? At least 100. I agree with Yiyun. If you ever do that, I mean, if you land on the project with that, you know what you need to do, right? Get your belongings and leave the office as soon as possible. Something has some mental issues there, right? But hey, technically speaking, it's right. It's right. Yeah. So I mean, let's go back to a healthy workshop and let's keep one element. So let me revert some of the changes and let's continue with the battle. Let's see if there is any rival to the ID. Can you think about something more specific than an ID selector?
Inline Styles.
Oh, I love that, Chuck. Yes, yes, yes. Inline styles. So in HTML, you can do that. And now be careful. Be careful. In HTML, you will do something like that. Where is blue? Oh, we don't have blue. All right, so let's put blue color. Technically speaking, in HTML, you can do that. You can add a background color to that particular element. Let's go back to the browser and see what happened. Ooh. Error. Do you remember what I told you on Monday, that HTML and JSX are very similar, but they have some subtle differences? We talk about class names, yeah? There is a second difference. You cannot do that. You cannot do that in React. Even though, once again, this is valid in HTML. In React, as the error is suggesting here, look at the example. You need to refactor that code a bit. You need to pass an object, and then, as part of the object, you need to do background color blue. It's a slightly different syntax, and that's also wrong, because that's not even an object. So, as you will shortly see, in React, sometimes we pass curly braces. When you pass curly braces in React, that means that inside you can add some JavaScript, whatever. You can create a variable, whatever. Yeah? In that particular case, we want to pass an object with a list of key value pairs. How do you declare an object in JavaScript, as we explained yesterday? Which symbol represents objects in JavaScript? Square bracket, wrong. Curly bracket. Square bracket is for what? Arrays, correct. So you can do that. Yeah, the syntax is a bit weird, but that's the way React works. So technically speaking, now, here you go. You see, the color is blue, clearly. So that's what we call the inline selector, as Chuck suggested. We can talk about that in a minute. But before talking about whether that's a good strategy or not, can you give me the number associated to the inline selector? How much? 1,000, that's correct, Florin. You see the scale is always the same. It's factor 10. 1 to 10, 10 to 100, 100 to 1,000. Yeah? But now, another classic job interview question. If you have to do some pair programming with an employee and they present you that code and they just want to have a chat about it, like the board challenge, what will be your thoughts? What do you think about inline styling? Is it good technique, bad technique, and why?
Probably isn't that, because if you need to refactor and you have lots of components, you're going to need to do it countless times or whatever.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. So inline styling is, generally speaking, considered an anti-pattern. Why? Because that style only can be taken by this element. When declaring that a class box, that means I can add multiple elements with class box. So if tomorrow I want to change the class box from green to purple, I change it once and all my boxes will inherit the change. However, if you do it here, that style is specific for that element. So it doesn't scale really well. Yeah? That's, generally speaking, considered an anti-pattern. When you see lots of style tags in the code, that smells a bit. So that answer will be enough to pass that question as a junior developer. However, one day you'll get that question and you'll be applying to a senior position. And to me, that answer wouldn't be enough. So let me tell you a couple of scenarios where that strategy is acceptable. You are not expected to know that as a junior developer, but hey, if you talk about that in a job interview, they will be surprised because they may not even know that. So there are two scenarios where using inline styles is an acceptable strategy. Let me show you something. Do you remember yesterday I showed you an example of a pop-up floating with position absolute? Do you remember I play around with position top, bottom, and manually changing the pixels, 10, 12, 11, blah, 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 blah. So now let me show you an example. If I go back to Codery, and I click somewhere, you may have noticed we have some, here we go, some tooltips. You see that? So there is some CSS under the hood deciding the position of the tooltip. But the thing is, the position of the tooltip is dynamic depending on where my mouse is. You see? So then what? We cannot predict the position of the tooltip deterministically. Because if I have another button here and I want to add a tooltip, then the tooltip position will be different. So the tooltip position is dynamic, could be anything. So whenever that happens, the only way to calculate the dynamic position of the mouse is via JavaScript. So with JavaScript, you can figure out where the cursor is on the screen. And thanks to that, you can do things like that. 10 or 11, let me show you, sorry for that. 11 or 12. So you can dynamically play with CSS via JavaScript. Yeah? Once again, you are not expected to know that, but that's definitely a reason to use, in some very particular cases, inline styles. There is another reason, which is performance. Technically speaking, writing styles like that is slightly more efficient than writing styles like that. 99.99% of the web apps don't care about that. But companies like Amazon, they care about that. So if you go to amazon.co.uk and you inspect, you will find lots of style tags on the HTML. And then you may think, oh, are the Amazon engineers stupid because they're doing it wrong? Of course not. Of course not. They notice that by inlining the styles on the HTML, they managed to speed up the loading times of Amazon website by maybe 2%. I don't know, I just made that up. Yeah? However, does that mean that they really code like that? No. As you will see on task number 17, once we deploy your CodeFlix app to the cloud, there is a process where we can sort of optimize our source code for the cloud. Optimize. We can bundle files, we can minimize them, we can blah, blah, we can perform some operations. Yeah? So one of these operations could be, hey, all right, so I did that, which is super sexy and works fine. However, even though that's fantastic at development time, at execution time in the cloud, please run an algorithm to transform. So for instance here, which is the winning, ignoring the style, right? So without the style, which is the winning color? Magenta, correct. So at deployment time, we can say, please take the winning style, which is magenta, and then replace it. Instead of doing that, then leave it here. So there is tooling to transform from one side to the other at compilation time. Yeah? Once again, you're not expected to know that, but I think it's a good thing to know, right? That from a performance point of view, is slightly better. All right, so back to the example. We got the background color, now it's blue. Let me recap a bit. So it should remain blue where I am. Here you go, it's blue. Is there anything, can we defeat the inline selector somehow?
Yeah, by saying one of the tags after that it's important.
So in CSS, there is an evil suffix or suffix called important. So important changes the specificity of the selector from 1 to what? 10,000. That's correct. So the div selector that historically speaking has been ignored, it only worked on the first iteration. Now look, oh, it's back. It's back. It took the revenge. Yeah.
Does it multiply specificity? Does it just make it 10,000?
That's a good question. I don't know, to be honest. I don't know if it multiplies it. I don't know. That's a good question for Google. I don't know. But definitely, it defeats everything. Yep.
Is it a good approach to use important?
That was actually my next question. Even though that works technically speaking, and I think I found an answer for Alex's question, I'll back to it in a minute as well. What do you think? If the company asks you to evaluate/review that piece of code, what do you think about using important suffixes? Good or bad? Why? Do you get what Kaini said? No. Can you please speak a bit louder for the audience? It's complicated to change it. All right. Let me present you a real life issue. Imagine that I'm working on that company and let's say that someone built that, yellow, someone else changed the color to class, someone else add the ID, someone else, everybody is adding a different color to the header of our platform. And then if I'm the original developer of this product, after 2 weeks, I open the app on my smartphone. I at that time, the color was yellow, and then blue. Who did that? Oh, green? It's not green either. Salmon? Not salmon. Magenta? What the hell? Someone, oh good, someone has been very aggressive as a consequence of all the other changes. But then I said, no. Yellow is the best color, so, I want to win this battle, this discussion. I add important, and then color yellow, I deploy to the cloud, I'm happy, I go to the pub, and I get drunk. Yeah? But the day after, another colleague who changed the color to green the day after me says, hey, wait a minute, what the hell is going on here? No. Green is the right color, no problem at all. Yeah, I'll fix it. And back to what Alex said, I'm not fully convinced, sorry, that's that, right? I'm not fully convinced if it's doing 10 plus 10,000 or 10 multiplied by, I don't know exactly. But for sure, now that style is more specific. Yeah? And then the guy who created the ID said, no, magenta is the right color. So now it's magenta again, right? So I hope you see the problem. This battle is escalating dangerously. And at some point, the code, the CSS code, will be very hard to maintain. Because what happens if I really want to keep the color yellow? I cannot, I guess game over for me. I cannot do anything. Yeah? So definitely, when you see that type of code with lots of important suffixes, wrong. They fail orchestrating their their CSS structure. And that's a classic problem. That's not that weird. I mean, definitely, if you see someone adding 2,000 divs, just run away, right? But having multiple important suffixes is far from ideal, but unfortunately, in the real life, it happens often. Even at Codery, sometimes we have to do that, as I'll explain in a minute. So yeah, that's not a good thing. And once again, that's game over. Try to minimize the usage. If at some point, without the important suffixes, you cannot change the style, try to refactor your CSS, try to find an alternative. Remove unnecessary styles, I don't know, but don't add the important suffix. Yep, so that will be question for a junior developer. What do you think about important? You know that's not a good strategy, and then you can explain the reasons. However, once again, if you are applying to a senior position, the next question will be, is there any scenario where you can actually, where you can accept as a senior software developer the introduction of the important suffix? I will say yes. Back to the tooltip example. So you see, the color of the tooltip is cerulean, is light blue, 00 AEF. However, I didn't build that component. This is coming from GitHub. Someone created a React tooltip component, and I just downloaded it and I'm using it. However, the default style of the component is, I think, orange. Yeah, by default, because tooltips need a color, could be whatever. Yeah, the creator of the library thought that orange was a good color, which I'm not against that, but obviously orange doesn't play really well with our color scheme. So the first thing I did is, all right, so let me actually present you something like the real problem. So I noticed that we got something like that. I just made that up, right? So don't take that seriously. So then what I did is, all right, because I wanted blue, I did something like that, right? But then I went back to the browser and the tooltip was still orange. And I said, all right, I don't know. I also noticed that it has an ID, whatever. And then I said, all right, so let's try to be more specific than the creator of the library. Foo, sorry, actually let me replace that here. Foo, background color blue. And back, it was still orange. And then I checked the code again, and I realized that maybe there was a style. And then, because there was an inline style, the only way to defeat the inline style was by adding the important. Sorry, not important, yeah, so adding important. And that's the way I managed to defeat the library. It was very aggressive. And I definitely tried to be polite. I tried to change the color using a class name, an ID. I tried to be gentle. But it didn't work. That's the thing.
Sorry. What about just like deleting the line of code with style?
No, you can't. You can't. No. Because don't forget, this is an external package that you download from the internet. Yeah, we'll see. We'll talk about how to install add-ons and plugins to your platform. Yeah, we'll talk about that in the future. But it's something that comes from the internet. You cannot go to the source code and change it. You cannot do that. You cannot do that. Because if you do that, as soon as you update the version of the library, it will get rid of your changes, right? So it's not a good practice to change the source code of something external. Once again, because I didn't have the control on the code that someone else wrote, my only way to kill that CSS rule was by adding the important suffix. Yeah, so that will be, to me, probably the only example where exclamation mark important is valid, where you don't have the control on the code you are trying to deal with. Any questions? No? All good? All clear? All right, so that's pretty much it. Let me just show you a final joke. So, have you watched the Shining movie? No? The Shining? No? Are you sure? No? All right, so if you search the Shining CSS specificity, the thing is, you haven't watched the movie, that feels a bit weird, right? But there is a really good joke about yeah, about the selectors, right? So even though obviously the resolution of the picture is horrible, let me try to find the picture at full screen. It's sometimes a bit challenging, don't ask me why. Am I the only person that finds very annoying when you go to Google, you find an image, you click on the image to get it at full screen, and then the link doesn't contain the image? Here you go. All right. So, you see, div 1, 2 tags, 2, 9 tags, 9. When talking about classes, you see, one class, it got specificity 10. That's a bit hard to read, but you see, this is 0 to 9, this is 10 to 99, and this is about 100. So yeah, I mean, this is a good joke. It may take a while to understand. There's some tiny details we haven't covered today, but essentially here it explains how specificity works. Look, inline style, yeah, 1000. Do you remember? And finally, important, it kills them all, 10,000. So that's pretty much it. There is something I didn't mention, but probably we can talk about that. I started this workshop talking about number 1. What is it? Here you go. But there is something before. What is it? Sorry, here. This is one div selector. What that means? Is there any selector with specificity 0? Everything, but what everything means, technically speaking. So yes, there is a special selector in CSS, which is the star. Default, yeah, you can think about default. So that star will apply to every single HTML in your website, in your web app. Yeah. So if you do, obviously this is not going to work, right? Background color red, not going to work because it's fighting against the ID. But if we get rid of the ID, hopefully, oh, sorry, I got the style. Let me get rid of the style tag. Here you go. Let me try again. Here you go. You see? You see? By default now, the background color is red. Why? Because I use the star selector. The star applies, as you said, the default style for every element in your web app. So what's the specificity associated to the wildcard default selector? It's 0. That's correct. Yeah? It's 0. So yeah, that was the last bit. Any questions? No? All right. So that was it, guys.